The recycled air aboard Omega-9 station carried its usual blend of ozone, cold metal, and the faint scent of synthetic coffee. Lucas Kowalski focused on the task before him, tightening the last bolt on a malfunctioning maintenance droid. His workshop, nestled in the lower engineering deck, had always been his sanctuary, his escape from the chaos that filled the spaceport above. "There you go, little guy," Lucas muttered, wiping grease from his hands before activating the droid. The optical sensors flickered to life with a soft blue glow. "Try moving your left arm now." The droid obediently rotated its appendage, emitting a series of appreciative beeps. "Don't thank me yet," Lucas remarked, eyeing the diagnostic readout on his wrist computer. "Just stay away from the plasma conduits this time. I can't keep rebuilding you from scratch." Suddenly, a crash echoed from the corridor outside, causing Lucas to jump. The reinforced door to his workshop slid open with a hydraulic hiss, revealing a figure who didn't belong in his humble space. She was tall, with skin the color of twilight, and hair that shimmered like liquid starlight. Her form-fitting attire was a sharp contrast to the station's worn-down environment, suggesting wealth far beyond anything the aging Omega-9 could offer. But it was her eyes, brilliant gold and blazing with royal fury, that captured Lucas's attention. "You," she said, pointing a slender finger at him, her voice icy. "You're the mechanic." Lucas straightened, suddenly aware of the grease stains on his coveralls. "I'm the chief engineer of my ship," he replied, finding his voice. "It requires immediate attention." She swept into the room as though she owned the place, her movements graceful despite her clear agitation. "The quantum drive is malfunctioning," she continued, "and I have pressing business on Centaur Prime." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "Look, Your Highness," he said, noting the intricate symbol on her brow. "There's a proper procedure for requesting repairs. You'll need to file." "I am Princess Laria of Houselaw," she interrupted, producing a crystal flask from within her outfit and taking a long sip. "We don't file paperwork." "Everyone files paperwork on Omega-9," Lucas insisted, crossing his arms. "Even visiting royalty. Station regulations are clear about the—" The flask slipped from her fingers, crashing to the floor and shattering. Lucas lunged forward, catching her before she hit the deck plates. The flask's iridescent liquid spilled across the floor. "Hey, are you okay?" Lucas's heart raced as she went limp in his arms. Her skin burned fever-hot through the thin fabric of her clothes. Laria's golden eyes fluttered. "The drink." "Something's wrong," she whispered weakly, clutching at his coveralls. Get medical." Lucas slapped the emergency comm panel. "Medical emergency in engineering. Workshop 7. I need a team here now." The princess convulsed once, then went still. Only the rapid pulse in her throat told Lucas that she was still alive. "Stay with me, princess," he murmured as he gently lowered her to the floor, keeping her head elevated. "Help's coming." The station's medical response was impressively fast. Within minutes, emergency personnel flooded the workshop, followed by what appeared to be Laria's royal security detail. Tall, armored figures who regarded Lucas with suspicion. Dr. Mary Davis, the station's chief medical officer, hurried to the princess's side. The medical scanner hummed as it passed over Laria's unconscious form. She frowned at the readings. "This is unprecedented," she muttered, tapping rapidly on her tablet. "She's been poisoned with something I've never seen before. Some kind of adaptive toxin that's specifically targeting her genetic structure." A royal guard stepped forward, his armor gleaming under the harsh lights. "Is there an antidote?" "It's not that simple," Dr. Davis replied, her expression grim as she studied the data. "The poison is binding to her cellular structure. We need—" She paused, rechecking the scan. "We need a compatible donor for a complete bioenergetic transfer." Lucas, who had been trying to blend into the background, spoke up. "And what now?" "It's a process unique to her species," Dr. Davis explained. "They can exchange life force through intimate contact, but the donor must be genetically compatible. Otherwise, it could kill them both." The guard's posture stiffened. "Then we must begin testing immediately." "No time," Dr. Davis cut him off. "She has 36 hours at most. We need to test everyone on this station now." What followed was a blur of activity. Medical staff began scanning the growing crowd of onlookers, conducting genetic tests on anyone within reach. Lucas found himself pulled into the line, his protests ignored. When the scanner passed over him, it let out a shrill beep that froze everyone in their tracks. Dr. Davis stared at her tablet in disbelief. This can't be right. She ran the scan again. Same result. Mr. Kowalski, she said slowly, her voice edged with disbelief. You're showing a 99.9% compatibility match. The Royal Guards turned toward Lucas. One of them spoke first. Impossible. He's human. Mostly human, Dr. Davis corrected, still studying the readings. But there are some unusual markers in his genetic structure that I've never seen before. The compatibility is undeniable. Lucas's heart skipped a beat. What exactly does that mean? Before anyone could answer, Laria stirred on the medical gurney. Her golden eyes opened slowly, focusing hazily on the room around her. What's happening? She asked weakly. Dr. Davis approached cautiously. Your Highness, you've been poisoned. We found a compatible donor for the bioenergetic transfer. We need to begin immediately. Laria's voice was weak but firm. The donor is? She followed Dr. Davis's gesture, and her eyes widened in horror when they landed on Lucas. The mechanic, she said incredulously. I'm actually the chief engineer, Lucas muttered, wondering why that was the part he'd chosen to object to. Laria tried to sit up, but collapsed back with a grimace. There must be someone else. Anyone else? The compatibility readings are clear, Dr. Davis insisted. And we're running out of time. The process needs to begin immediately. And what exactly does this process involve? Lucas asked, his voice tinged with dread. Dr. Davis hesitated, then spoke reluctantly. The transfer requires physical intimacy. The more direct the contact, the more effective the transfer. Physical? Lucas choked, his face turning pale. Yes, Laria snapped, her violet skin darkening slightly, perhaps from embarrassment. We must mate, you primitive creature. The workshop fell into stunned silence. Lucas glanced around, hoping someone would call out that this was all some sort of elaborate prank. But the serious expressions on the medical staff and royal guards told him otherwise. This is ridiculous, he finally managed. I can't just, with a princess? You think I want this? Laria hissed, her voice dripping with disdain. To be bound to a common mechanic again? Chief engineer, Lucas corrected automatically, earning a sharp glare from her. And nobody said anything about being bound. Dr. Davis cleared her throat. Actually, the process creates a permanent biological connection. You'll be linked for life. For life. Lucas echoed, his mind racing. And what happens if I say no? The alternative is death, Dr. Davis said bluntly. Without the transfer, the poison will spread, and you'll both die within 36 hours. Laria's golden eyes locked onto Lucas's, studying him with a mixture of desperation and revulsion. You will do this, she said, her tone leaving no room for negotiation. That wasn't a question, was it? Lucas thought. He ran a hand through his hair, trying to make sense of the madness unfolding around him. This morning, his biggest concern had been fixing a maintenance droid. Now, he was being told that the only way to save an alien princess's life was to mate with her. And if he agreed, he would be permanently bound to her. If I agree to this, he asked hesitantly, what exactly am I getting myself into? Dr. Davis consulted her tablet. The process requires regular, intimate contact over the next 36 hours. The more thorough the contact, the faster the poison will be neutralized. And after, Lucas pressed, you'll be able to sense each other's emotions, physical states, she explained. You won't be able to move too far apart without experiencing discomfort. There may be other effects we can't predict, given your unique genetic structure. Laria made a sound, part laugh, part sob, as the gravity of the situation hit her. The heir to house law, she murmured, bound to a station mechanic. My father will have me exiled. Chief engineer, Lucas corrected for the third time, and this time, even Laria seemed to remember. She blinked, surprised. He took a deep breath. And you're not exactly my dream match either, princess. Her golden eyes flashed. How dare you? Another wave of pain hit her, and she gasped, clutching her abdomen. Her vital signs are dropping, Dr. Davis announced. We need to begin the transfer now. Lucas looked at the princess, this beautiful, arrogant woman who had crashed into his carefully ordered life and turned. Council chambers doors, their steps measured and confident. It was a surreal moment, the two of them, standing side by side, a pair now bound not just by the twisted fate that had brought them together but by a bond that was pure, undeniable, and something that no amount of political maneuvering could ever have orchestrated. As they approached the grand hall, the heavy doors swung open, revealing the full assembly of the Galactic High Council, murmuring in confusion at their unexpected arrival. At the center, seated in her elaborate chair, was Minister Valera, her face a mixture of surprise and irritation. Behind her stood Draven, his jaw clenched, eyes burning with fury. But Lucas and Laria walked forward, undeterred, their golden patterns glowing with undeniable power. Their connection had evolved into something beyond manipulation, beyond the poisons and lies that had plagued them. It was real. It was theirs. Minister, Laria spoke, her voice commanding attention, her regal presence magnified by the shared energy of their bond. Your plot has failed. We are not your puppets, and this union is not your victory. The room went still, the tension palpable. Valara's eyes narrowed, and Draven stepped forward, rage evident on his face. You've gone too far, princess. You dare defy your own people for this mechanic? Draven spat, his voice dripping with disdain. Laria's eyes flickered to Lucas, and she gave a slight nod. They were ready. This was no longer about saving themselves. It was about exposing the truth, tearing down a corrupt system that had treated them both as nothing more than pawns in a game they were never meant to play. Yes, Lucas replied, his voice steady, his gaze unwavering. I dare. And it's time you all learned what real power is. The tension in the room thickened, and before anyone could respond, Laria's hand found Lucas's once more, the golden patterns surging between them. Their connection, once tenuous, was now a powerful force, radiating outward in a burst of energy that swept over the room, leaving no doubt in anyone's mind that the true power was not in the hands of the High Council, the Minister, or even Draven, but in the unity of their bond. The golden light shimmered around them as they approached the Council's center, ready to lay bare the conspiracy that had shaped their lives. We will not stand by and let you control us, Laria said firmly. Not anymore. We're going to expose everything. Your genetic experiments, your manipulations, your lies. And we'll do it our way. The room was silent, the weight of her words settling heavily on the assembly. Draven opened his mouth to protest, but Laria held up a hand, silencing him. Enough, she commanded. We've already won. And with that, the doors of the council chamber closed behind them, and the fate of the galaxy was set in motion. By the couple that had once been nothing more than a tool in a grand scheme, now united in their love and in their quest for justice. But even as they stood tall before the council, the future was still uncertain. There would be battles ahead, political, personal, and emotional. But they knew one thing for sure. Together, they could face anything. And the galaxy would never be the same again. The chamber's polished walls reflected the harsh glare of the overhead lights as Minister Valera stood at the podium, her voice crisp and commanding. The dangers of unrestricted genetic mixing are undeniable. We must maintain the purity of our bloodlines. This incident with Princess Laria proves that interspecies bonds are an affront to our natural order. Proves, came a sharp voice, slicing through the minister's rhetoric like a plasma blade, that your carefully engineered poison worked exactly as intended. Gasps erupted throughout the hall as heads swiveled toward the source. Princess Laria, standing tall beside Chief Engineer Lucas Holt, their skin shimmered with golden, bioluminescent patterns that pulsed in perfect harmony. Minister Valera faltered, her confident mask cracking for just an instant. Your Highness, she recovered quickly. This confusion stems from your unfortunate condition. Clearly, the bond has impaired your judgment. No, Laria said, stepping forward. The golden lines along her skin flared as she projected a data file onto the chamber's main display. This confusion stems from your conspiracy. Your files confirm it. Decades of genetic manipulation, arranged bonds designed to ensure political control, and my poisoning to trigger a forced bond. Lies. Valera hissed. Your files, Lucas said coldly. Time-stamped, encrypted with your biometric signature. Your obsession with purity blinded you to the strength of genuine connection. The chamber doors burst open, and Prince Draven stormed in, his 4 muscular arms bristling with weapons. Enough of this farce, he bellowed. His eyes locked on Laria's glowing form. What have you done to her, human? He did nothing to me, Laria declared. We did this together. By choice. Impossible. Valara's facade shattered entirely. The bond was engineered to create subservience. Biology should have made you compliant. Lucas stepped forward, gripping Laria's hand. Their patterns intertwined, intensifying until the energy rippled through the entire chamber. You wanted evolution, Minister? You got it. Just not the kind you could control. The golden energy cascaded outward, crackling through the Council's instruments. Where it touched others, faint luminescent patterns appeared on their skin. Dormant genetic potential activated for the first time. The gathered dignitaries murmured in shock. Real evolution isn't about engineered superiority, Laria said, her voice resonating with authority. It's about connection, and it can't be forced. Draven roared and raised his weapons. You are my betrothed. I forbid this. Laria fixed him with a withering glare. I am not your property. I am not your genetic experiment. I am my own person, and I have made my choice. Guards surged forward as Valera screamed orders. But the Council, emboldened by the golden resonance, stepped in. Draven and Valera were subdued, their weapons stripped away. Lucas exhaled slowly. Well, that escalated quickly. Laria squeezed his hand, patterns swirling playfully. It did, didn't it? 1 month later, aboard the engineer's star, a sleek vessel with golden veins of energy coursing through its hull, Lucas stared out the viewport at the drifting stars. The patterns on his skin glowed softly, echoing Laria's approach before she wrapped her arms around his waist. The Council's still arguing, she murmured against his back. Apparently, a princess choosing a commoner wasn't in the rulebook. Shocking, he said dryly, turning to face her. Former princess, she corrected with a grin. My father was quite clear about that when he disowned me. Right before resigning in disgrace. Timing's everything, Lucas said. The comm panel chimed, and a news feed flickered to life. Breaking. Mixed-species couples flood the Galactic Council with requests for recognition following the mechanic and the princess scandal. Lucas chuckled. Your father's going to hate that headline. Former father, she teased. And he's probably not alone. Their patterns glowed brighter as they embraced, foreheads touching. So, Lucas asked, what's next? The Council wants us to represent the new interspecies alliance, Laria said. Ambassadors of connection, politicians? He groaned. More like living proof, she said softly. That real connection transcends biology, politics, and fear. Speaking of biology, Lucas murmured, tugging her closer. I think the ship's core patterns need recalibration. Her eyes darkened with amusement. Chief Engineer Holt, are you suggesting unauthorized maintenance? Absolutely. She laughed and kissed him, the golden light of their bond flaring as the stars outside blurred into hyperspace. Meanwhile, deep in the galactic core, a hidden lab's monitors flickered with the recorded images of Laria and Lucas standing against the Council. A figure cloaked in shadow watched the display, eyes narrowing at the sight of their golden patterns. Project Starbright, the figure muttered. It was never supposed to produce this. The figure tapped a comm unit. Activate the retrieval teams. Locate the hybrids. And bring me the mechanic and the princess. Alive. In the endless night beyond, the stars seemed to shimmer in warning as a new chapter of the mechanic and the princess's adventure stirred to life.